So you've been in the market for a new electric bike, and you probably really like these sporty looking bikes, kind of like that Super 73 vibe, but you don't want to drop $4, $5, or even $6,000 on an e-bike. So yeah, you're probably looking to do what I did, which was pick up the Meelod DK300 MAX. And yeah, I definitely want to buckle up for this one because this is a fast one. So before we get into all of the bike's features and also get my honest opinion about the bike, let me just give you guys a little bit of a background about my history and my knowledge about e-bikes. So I actually own a production company and I've worked with over 20 different electric bike brands where I produce them their sales videos that they use on their website. That all being said, I've probably ridden and tested over 50 or even 60 e-bikes within the last 12 months. And I only say that because I want you guys to know that when it comes to testing all these e-bikes and even talking about this specific bike, I got a little bit of experience. And the hope is that by the end of this video, you will have a much better idea and have your decision made on if you should go ahead and purchase this bike. So before we get into the features, let's first talk about the price of this bike. At the time of me making this video, you can pick up this bike for $1,600 USD. And based on a lot of other e-bikes on the market, it's right around the median price point of an electric bike that does have 2 batteries and 2 motors. So the first main feature of this bike is that it does have a dual battery. The battery consists of 2 48-volt batteries, and that size of battery is pretty standard across a lot of the other e-bikes on the market. But what makes this one a little different is that it comes with 2. So you're pretty much just gonna get double the range that you would if you just had one single individual battery. So in addition to the bike having 2 batteries, it also has 2 individual motors, one on the front of the bike and one on the back of the bike. And the way that you can actually control it once you get on the back of this e-bike is you can either pick if you only want the back motor to work, if you only want the front motor to work, or if you want both of them to be on at the same time, you turn that on in the settings on the LCD screen, and you pretty much have double the torque. Speaking about the speed of this electric bike, they market on their website that it has a top speed of 35 miles per hour. But guys, I have literally hit 39, almost redlining at 40 miles per hour on this bike. So this bike is no joke. The fact that this bike has 2 separate motors just makes this thing absolutely insane on the road. That all being said, guys, please, if you guys end up purchasing this bike, please wear a helmet because this thing is not a joke. And if you were to fall off or get in some sort of accident on this bike at the top speed of this thing, you could be seriously injured. So just keep in mind, guys, that this thing is not a toy for your kids or anything like that. This thing is extremely fast. Now let's get into the range of this bike. They market that the bike has 150 miles of range. Now guys, when it comes to electric bikes, I've never been in the situation from when I'm at point A going to point B, then having to come back to point A where I've had to charge the e-bike somewhere in between. That all being said, I take this thing to the beach and back, which is probably about 2 or 3 miles from my house. And I do that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times before I even think about plugging it back into charge. So I think that their range of 150 miles is probably going to be pretty accurate with this thing. I don't know why anyone would need to take the electric bike a whole 150 miles, but if you do, and that is something to consider, then you know, it definitely has a pretty good range. And since it does have 2 batteries, that's kind of what doubles, you know, the whole range on this bike. Okay, so moving into the brakes of this bike, the bike has a 4-piston hydraulic disc brake. So they're just regular bike brakes, but what I will say about them is I did test them out on the roads and on the street, and they did do a pretty good job of stopping the bike compared to a lot of the other e-bikes that I do test out and use. I do feel a little bit more confident with the brake system that was installed specifically on this bike. Moving into the next feature of the bike, which is going to be the LCD screen. And again, compared to a lot of the other e-bikes that I've rode, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's pretty similar to a lot of the other bikes on the market. But what I will say is that it does have a very cool, sporty futuristic look that I'm a huge fan of. In addition, it also has a feature where right when you turn on the bike, you have to put in a passcode that you can manually set when you purchase the bike to even access all of the motors and whatnot. So that means that if somebody were to steal the bike and they didn't have that code, they couldn't just jump on the bike and then go 40 miles an hour. They'd probably just have to pedal it with the regular bike gears that are installed on the bike. Moving into the next feature is going to be the suspension. And guys, the suspension on the bike definitely is pretty good, especially if you're just going to be taking this thing on the street. When I was filming the video for this bike, I actually tested this thing off-road, and I will say that it was pretty bumpy. It didn't feel like a mountain bike. It's definitely not geared towards being a mountain bike, so just keep that in mind. If you're buying this bike to just try to take it off-road and go through the mountains and whatnot, it is going to be a bit bumpy, but I will say that if you're just going to be using it for the street, it feels very, very smooth. I feel like the bike was really engineered just to be used on the street, so again, just keep that in mind. Which then brings me into the tires of this bike. So this bike has all surface tires, about 20 by 4, and again, compared to all of the other e-bikes that I currently own, these bikes are much more thicker. They look like they're meant for the street. They almost look like a motorcycle tire. Not quite, but they're getting there. This bike has a lot of signs and a lot of features that really do indicate that this thing is made for the streets, and you know that's another aspect of the bike that is no different. And then just moving into some of the lights and things like that on the bike, it has a front headlight, which is pretty powerful, pretty useful. It has brake lights on the back, and it has turning signal lights. So if you are taking this thing on the street and you want to move it into the right lane or move into the left lane, you can do so with a little switch that you will have, you know, on the left handlebar of the bike. And then the last thing I just want to talk about in terms of features is going to be the size of the bike. So guys, again, I have a lot of e-bikes, and this is a larger bike compared to a lot of the other ones on the market. I actually live in a city, so I take this thing up and down the elevator, and I take it into my apartment building, and of course I store it in the entryway of my apartment. So you can definitely get away with doing so, but this thing really does look and feel, and it's not as heavy obviously as a motorbike, but that's kind of what they're going for on it. So just keep that in mind. It's a lot longer based on the body of the bike, so it's not as short, doesn't fit in tight spaces like some of the other bikes. But again, that's probably a good thing because of the speeds this thing can go. You want it to feel nice and confident when you're taking it 40 miles per hour. Okay, so now that we've talked about all the features of the bike, let's just talk about my honest opinion. So guys, no joke, I've probably tested around 50 e-bikes in the last 12 months. And first and foremost, the look of this bike is just honestly one of my favorite looks. I actually fell in love with the Super 73 e-bikes back when they were released for the longest time. I've always wanted to work with them. Haven't had that chance quite yet, but the Meelod is definitely along the same category in terms of a cool looking sport e-bike. And the best part is that it's much cheaper. And the fact that it does have 2 dual batteries and 2 motors makes this thing an absolute beast. So on terms of that, it's definitely a badass bike. Moving into the second kind of honest opinion about the bike, guys, it is a Chinese bike, okay? And from my experience, I've dealt with a lot of Chinese bikes, you know, there are different levels of quality on them. But you'll always get some things that fall apart, some things that don't work properly just because they are coming from China. But again, from my experience with this bike so far, it's been pretty solid. I don't have any complaints in that area. Although I just want you guys to remember that these are Chinese bikes, so there will be issues with them when they're shipped out to you. There will be some sort of broken parts or whatnot. That just comes with the development of these bikes. But again, I haven't had any personal issues with it, and I do genuinely feel like this one is built a little bit better than some of the other Chinese bikes that I'm dealing with. So last but not least, would I recommend that you guys buy this e-bike? Well, guys, there's a lot of different e-bikes on the market, and this one is a little bit more expensive than some of the bikes that maybe only have 1 battery and 1 motor. And just to be completely honest, guys, I don't think you really need to have 2 batteries and 2 motors and a big bike that's almost like a street bike. I think that for 80% or 90% of people, I think you're better off maybe even getting, you know, if you like the look of Meelod, they have a smaller bike that doesn't have 2 dual batteries, doesn't have 2 dual motors, but still goes really, really fast. It just doesn't speed up as quickly. And I think that that's definitely more practical in terms of an electric bike, because again, this thing is pretty big and pretty beastly. Now, that all being said, I still use this bike as my daily driver just because of how badass it looks. And if you guys are going for something that is extremely fast, extremely badass for an electric bike, then definitely this is going to be a purchase for you. And it's for a pretty good competitive price. So hopefully you guys got some value in this video. A little bit different than a lot of my other videos, because this really is primarily a filmmaking, personal self-help, money-making channel. But since this is one of the products that I do a lot of shooting for, it does fit right in to my lifestyle and of course the video aspect of this channel. So if you guys are interested in anything video production, self-help, or learning how to make money within the video production industry, go ahead and check out my channel down below. I got lots of videos. And as always, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace out.